Well, if Florida had a Mount Rushmore of its greatest elected leaders, two of the spots would likely go to former Governor Lori Collins and former Governor and U.S. Senator Bob Graham. Collins was a profile in Courage and a story for another day, and Graham was a workhorse who brought people together and delivered lasting positive change. There's a reason why Bob Graham left office as governor with an 83% approval rating and earned respect from his fellow Democrats and Republicans. Let's start with Graham's Republican successor, former Governor Bob Martinez.
Not only was he a good public official, he was just a real great guy. Easy to work with, always polite. I think he was always on the right side of issues.
That's a Republican governor telling us the Democrat who preceded him was always on the right side of issues. And that statement really speaks to how politics and public discourse in Martinez and Graham's eras were far different from the hostile, divisive, rolling calamity we have today.
He didn't wear his partisanship, and neither did I on our sleeves. It's just a question of government.
As governor, Bob Graham led Florida through an economic boom while balancing that with the natural appeal of Florida. He delivered a growth management law that promoted smart development across Florida that helped us contain urban sprawl for nearly 30 years until it was dismantled. Graham also started the effort to preserve what was left of the Everglades and restore the Everglades. And he connected with people with a rare combination of intellect, charisma, and humor. For example, watch him rib our former reporter Lewis Young when he flubbed an interview question.
The former reporter was unable to complete his task because he could not speak the English language. Lewis, is this a problem that you've had for a long time or something of recent origin?
Now, Graham was a rare mix of a jokester and a policy wonk. He was passionate about his state and always moderate in how he led it. He was a UF and Harvard law graduate and a folksy common man who never lost the common touch.
He was a roofer for a home construction company.
As governor, he spent one day each month walking in other people's shoes, working hundreds of different jobs for a day, often breaking a hard sweat in the Florida heat and cracking jokes all along the way.
I've even had a real easy kind of no-work job as a television reporter.
Yeah. He spent one of his work days here at Fox 13 as an editor and a field reporter.
State and local government employs 1 out of every 20 Floridians.
And also as a news anchor for a day back in 1980, the day before Thanksgiving.
Roy, are the turkey feathers going to be wet or dry tomorrow?
President Clinton came close to picking Graham as his running mate in '92, and so did Al Gore in 2000. And if Al Gore had picked Bob Graham, instead of losing Florida and the presidency by 537 votes, it could have or would have changed the course of history. But that's also a story for another day.
He definitely would have had an impact in Florida, no doubt about that.
Well, Graham changed the course of history in other ways. For example, as a U.S. Senator, he was an early critic of the U.S. invasion of Iraq and the deeply flawed reconstruction that would follow. And he also co-chaired the congressional investigation into the September 11th attacks and developed deep-rooted concerns about the government of Saudi Arabia. He said classified records reveal our ally, the Saudi government, sponsored the attacks.
Let the people of America know what the Saudi role was in 9/11. I was chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. I had access to information that has not yet been made public.
And after he retired, Graham pressed 4 presidents to release those classified records. And the spotlight that he shined on that and the pressure he applied may have played a role in releasing some of the documents that do in fact draw ties from the hijackers to the Saudi government. Graham said there is much more still under lock and key that will one day reveal much more.
It has allowed an organization that supported the hijackers to possibly remain in place because it's gone undisclosed.
Graham retired from the Senate, led the Bob Graham Center at UF, and turned to writing.
Senator Bob Graham has written this book.
He wrote the book on civics and was a driving force in having it taught in our schools to make students more engaged and our government more responsive.
There is, unfortunately, a core of people in politics who think it's not to their advantage to have the public very well informed. What people really need to learn, in my opinion, is how can a citizen make government respond to their wishes.
He also co-chaired the investigation into the BP oil disaster and recommended changes to prevent a future disaster, and he sounded alarms when the new safeguards were repealed.
And now those regulations are being abolished. We're back to pre-BP standards in many areas. That ought to be on the Florida agenda.
Well, Graham never let up in advocating for our environment and promoting public education. But his family said he always put his loved ones first and considered his life and role as a husband, father, grandfather, and great-grandfather to be his most important role. For example, in 2018, Graham woke up from heart surgery saying he's glad he came through so that he could see his daughter Gwen win the race for governor. Back then, Gwen Graham was the early front-runner in a year that favored Democrats, until Bernie Sanders put his thumb on the scale in the Democratic primary for a little-known weak mayor from Tallahassee under FBI investigation, while another dark horse candidate spent a fortune attacking Graham, all fueling the rise of DeSantis. But that's also a story for another day. Bob Graham's story lives on in places now you may not expect, like a widened Dale Mabry Highway and a thriving independent state university system, the safety of the Skyway Bridge that bears his name, the Save the Everglades program, and maybe future generations of students who may read about him one day and get inspired to follow his lead. This is the story of Bob Graham, and you won't find another quite like it in today's world of money, power, and politics.